Welcome to Roundhouse Roulette, a Walker, Texas Ranger podcast. Each week we recap and review one of the 200 existing Walker, Texas Ranger episodes randomly selected by Roundhouse Roulette. I'm Evan Dalton, here with my brother Adam and our blood brother, Mr. Bob Leahy. What's new, guys?
Hey, not much.
Oh, man. Yep. My hand's still healing up, but how you holding up, Bob, there?
I think I'm going to have a scar.
For at least one episode.
Yeah.
Well, we'd like to thank you all for joining us as we revisit Chuck Norris's 1990s nature documentary / action series, Walker, Texas Ranger. Today we're going to be recapping and reviewing Season 3, Episode 6, Rainbow Warrior, where Walker finds himself fighting crime on the Oklahoma reservation where he grew up. But before we don our super cool buffalo bone chokers, join us as we pull up a bar stool at CD's Bar and Grill. Fancy meeting you guys here. What's happening?
Oh, man, just settling into the week here.
Well, this week, CD has chosen to serve us up a Super Radiant Double IPA from Treehouse Brewing Company in Charlton, Mass. As described by the summer, or I guess you could call it the fall draft menu at this point. Super Radiant pours a glowing orange color in the glass and emits a super potent flavor of ripe, juicy peach, mango, orange juice, and tropical fruit, as if those weren't already. Right. You guys ready to check out this smoothie? I mean, beer?
Oh, man, I'm feeling fruity. I mean, the can looks like an acid trip, so I'm kind of...
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
It's like Jerry Garcia's 1995 computer art.
You know, I'm really picking up the tropical fruit.
It's got a very cloudy complexion.
Bob, you glowing like a ripe orange?
I love it, man.
Oh yeah, this is really good. A lot of flavor.
You can taste that peach, can't you? Stone fruit, I should say.
Yes,
Yeah,
definitely some stone fruit action going on here.
Definitely. Treehouse is known for their stoned fruit.
Yeah.
But yeah, seriously, again, it's a double IPA, but it's not too aggressive as far as hoppiness, and the fruit just kind of settles everything just right. You know, I know we were making fun of people who talk about mouthfeel when it comes to craft beer, but I'm just going to go right in there and say, oh, my palate is satiated.
Wow. I would say it has a less viscous mouthfeel than the last one.
It's not as viscous as, say, spaghetti sauce. Okay.
It's somewhere between a spaghetti sauce and a tap water.
Well, it's like spaghetti sauce if it had fart powder mixed in. Probably about that texture.
Now that we've established that we are not beer aficionados, or at the very least, we're better suited for rating Walker, Texas Ranger episodes than beers. How about that? As this week's episode is our first deep dive into Walker's Cherokee heritage, we thought it best to briefly discuss Walker, Texas Ranger's portrayal of Native American culture in the series.
Yeah, so first off, Walker, he looks like the whitest guy on earth, right? And it always kind of bothered me, that they portray him as a practitioner of, Native American culture in the series. So I did a little research, and this is what I came up with. Chuck Norris was born Carlos Ray Norris in Ryan, Oklahoma in 1940 to an Irish mother and a Cherokee father. There were taunts by kids about being a half-breed, he told New York Times in 1993. So apparently he sounds like he's half Native American. So early on in the series, we see a lot more of this Native American lore in the show. It gradually transitions from Native American spiritualism to Christianity by the end of the series. So it's kind of interesting to see the show grapple with those two things, which are kind of at odds sometimes.
For sure. Not just in the show, but throughout American history.
Most definitely.
It's definitely interesting. I mean, when the show first started out, it probably was one of the first to not only employ a lot of Native Americans, but also show them in the context of their actual living situations.
Again, as we are three white guys from the Northeast talking about this stuff, so it's great that he brings some of these things to the forefront. Like a lot of the issues that Walker Texas Ranger deals with, sometimes it seems like he's doing more harm than good. Even though the intention is good. The intention's good.
Yeah,
Yes,
the heart's in the right place.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's often over the top. Mysticism seems like it's maybe taken a bit too far, maybe. To put things into context, as Adam was saying, yes, we're from the Northeast. We're three white guys. Adam and I actually grew up in the Plymouth area. One of our school trips would always be to go to Plymouth Plantation, which was a representation of the Plymouth Bay colony from the early 1620s. And it really glorified the stories of the Pilgrims, but the native tribes in our place, in our neck of the woods, it was the Wampanoags. They were kind of relegated, even in Plymouth Plantation, to sort of this back corner.
Corner lot.
Yeah, and even to like this day, those folks actually aren't reenacting anything, but everyone treats them like they are because they don't know that they're not reenacting. So it's just very awkward. I will say that Plymouth Plantation, they just changed their name to Plymouth Pawtuxet. So they're maybe coming around to some things. Suffice it to say that we did not learn the 1619 curriculum in school.
Did you guys notice a little actor swap in this episode?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first couple seasons, Walker was raised by Uncle Ray, who was played by Floyd Red Crow Westerman. I believe he passed away maybe after season 2, at which point Uncle Ray is kind of played by a couple of different actors. In this episode, he's played by Aposendaquit, I believe, who's a Native American actor, but also an activist. I will say that they employ a lot of Native Americans throughout the production of a lot of particularly the early seasons of Walker, Texas Ranger. Whether or not they're particularly accurate in the cultural representations, that I can't necessarily speak to, although I think for some of the things, I think we're all in agreement that they're so over the top or a bit so stereotypical that you kind of have to roll your eyes in some cases.
Yeah, most definitely. But mainly about this character swap, it's kind of like when they swapped out the African-American preacher for another African-American actor. In a previous episode we talked about, they literally were like, oh, well, we'll just... Uncle Ray, I mean, he's been in like almost 14 episodes. He's a recurring character who took care of Walker, and then they just swap him out for another Native American when Floyd Red Crow Westerman was still alive and doing TV shows like X-Files and other stuff too. They could have, in this episode, as we'll see, they could have very easily not had the guy be Uncle Ray.
True. I thought Floyd Red Crow Westerman had passed away, and that's why they didn't.
No, he was still alive. To their credit, though, I mean, this is not in the era where they expected people to binge watch TV shows. We're just we need to have an episode out every week, as we here are finding it's hard to do, to have an episode out every week. So if someone can't make it, we're going to get somebody else. So I totally get that too, and they might have had the intention of having Red Crow on there as well.
I will say that both actors are really good.
Most definitely. And they've got some great credits too. So we'll definitely pop them up on our episode page for this episode. So let's move on to kind of like the inspiration for the title of this episode, which is Rainbow Warrior. There's a legend of the Rainbow Warriors. In the episode, they're kind of talking about how when Mother Earth senses that the land is being destroyed, that a Rainbow Warrior will come out and protect her. That's kind of what I took from it, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
And let's just say, like, that's kind of, I mean, it's in the episode, but it's not a big theme of the episode. It was negligible.
They do that a lot with episodes where, you know, the title of the episode might be mentioned once, or it might have nothing to do with the actual plot of the episode. So you should never judge a Walker episode by its name.
But we're left to assume that this is a legend that is steeped in Native American tradition, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, so I, did some quick research. Be prepared for my college dissertation here, guys. Are you ready for this? Since the early 1970s, a legend of rainbow warriors has inspired some environmentalists and hippies with a belief that their movement is the fulfillment of a Native American prophecy. This prophecy is not Native American at all, but rather from a 1962 evangelical Christian religious tract.
Huh.
It was basically an evangelical Christian tract that was a way of attacking Native American culture in an attempt to evangelize the Native American community from within. Isn't that insane?
Pretty weird.
So I read a little bit more, and this movement of kind of bringing hippies into the Native American community kind of melded into a bunch of different groups. One of them being the Rainbow family. Have you heard of these guys?
No.
Down here in Nashville, they call them rainbow people. It's like hippies who live in the woods.
I think I have heard of these, even up in New Hampshire. I think when I was
probably,
a kid.
Probably are some people there. They're essentially like hippies who live off the land. And I went to a party up in Southern Illinois, and someone was like, oh yeah, that's a rainbow person. And he was pretty much just asking us for money and food.
So what you're saying is that the legend in this episode, supposedly Cherokee legend featured in this episode, is really just like a bunch of white people assimilating Native American culture for their own uses and environmental causes?
Yeah, and their intentions, again, much like Chuck Norris, are good. So they founded all these groups based on it because they were like, well, we're all here to save the planet, and that's a great thing. You don't want to knock that, But if you're taking Native American rituals and appropriating them, it's a little problematic. So in 2015, a group of Native American academics and writers issued a statement against the Rainbow family, who are appropriating and practicing faux Native ceremonies and beliefs. These actions, although rainbows may not realize, dehumanize us as indigenous nation because they imply our culture and humanity, like our land, is anyone's for the taking.
Oof.
Right?
That's fair.
Right, yeah. And in a way, Walker, Texas Ranger does the same thing by the end of the series, because Walker, he kind of takes piecemeal the Native American traditions and works them into this show, and then gradually stitches them with Christianity to a point where it's like a smokescreen of what the hell is happening.
I mean, I'd say for the rainbow thing, though, it probably wasn't that big of a deal when they filmed this episode, at least, because most of the people in the episode that actually are Native Americans, like, if it was a big deal, they would have been like, no, we're not doing this,
Even Uncle Ray, who is on Walker, Texas Ranger, the actor who plays him, performed at a Rainbow Warrior Festival in 1988 because the legend, or fake legend, which was propagated by Christians, had seeped into Native American culture. And it's easy because you're like, of course I'm going to play a concert where I'm saying to save the planet. Duh.
Right.
So of course he did it. But by the time people recognized the repercussions in 2015, they issued that statement about it. But I found it was amazing. I was like, wow, literally he's playing a Rainbow Warrior Festival.
So even then, there were probably people in the Native American community that were, like, not cool. But not everybody. This guy saw an opportunity to, he's talking about climate change. When was this video?
Performed in 88.
The guy who posted this is amazing that he leads off by telling us that we have 20 years to solve these powerful environmental challenges, and here we are 20 years later and just now ready to take them on.
And that was 12 years ago.
That's so sad.
We're not doing great, guys.
No.
Yeah.
I will say we did pretty much reverse the ozone layer problem.
That's interesting. I noticed he said that, and I was like, oh, got you there, but there's so many other bad things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Out of the frying pan, as they say.
Well, let's just say we'll be posting this performance by Floyd Red Crow Westerman at the Rainbow Warrior Festival on this week's episode page.
Doing his best Johnny Cash impression.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Bob, because He also has a whole album of tribute to Johnny Cash.
All right, of course.
Which is available on Spotify. So if you're wanting to jam to some Johnny Cash, but you're a little sick of Johnny singing them.
You want to hear someone else that sounds just like him?
He does. I listened to this record today while I was working, guys, and I can say there's no cheesy MIDI or anything on it you'd expect because the era it came out. It's actually pretty good. It's kind of stripped down Johnny Cash. Even Johnny Cash in his later days would kind of gloss up some of his recordings, and I would say that Floyd Redcrow takes him back to the roots. But I was kind of struck by the last song, Drums. I was like, is this just kind of like, you know how sometimes they tack on an original track at the end of these albums or something?
Sure, yeah.
Well, no, apparently it's a Johnny Cash song, and the first line of it is, "From the Indian reservation to the government school, where they're going to educate me to the white man's golden rule." I was like, wow, I guess that's kind of what happened with the Rainbow Warriors.
Yeah,
you know?
Totally.
And that led me to Johnny Cash, right? What's Johnny Cash doing talking about this stuff? Well, Johnny Cash, he believed he had some Cherokee ancestry, and that kind of inspired him to Native American activism in the 60s, and he did some music about it too. So it's kind of interesting, you know, you've got Johnny Cash and Chuck Norris both trying to talk about these issues as, I'm going to say, non-authentic Native Americans, right? And Floyd Redcrow Westerman in the middle of both of them. What does this mean?
I don't know. I guess it's mostly the fact that Native Americans don't have a great platform, and so they're willing to, dare I say, stoop to doing some things like Walker, Texas Ranger, or the Rainbow Warrior Music Festival of 1988 as an effort to raise some level of awareness. Well, I think we've opened up a lot of topics that we are either not qualified or equipped to handle. That being said, let's dive into Walker's past. If you're watching along at home and don't want any spoilers, hit pause and watch Season 3, Episode 6, Rainbow Warrior, and come on back to us. Welcome back. Let's dig into this one. The episode originally aired on November 5th, 1994, and it begins with someone we've never seen before performing some kind of ritual around two fires.
And there's like some screaming that just hits you right off the bat. It was like jarring. It was like, whoa!
One of the things I will say about Walker is that they have kind of nailed the cold open.
Oh, yeah.
We haven't seen an episode from this far back for a while, so it was kind of interesting to see the commercial breaks. When they came back from an obvious commercial break, they kind of recapped what had happened before the break.
Yeah.
So that happened a couple times in this episode, but the cold open was definitely like, if you came on over to this from like Nash Bridges, whew, that'll grab your attention right there. It's pretty compelling.
Yeah.
There's someone dancing around some fires. After a little bit of adjustment, you know, our eyes have to adjust to the darkness. We realize that this is a Native American man dancing around some sort of funeral pyre or something. And the next scene brings that home in that Walker and Alex and CD and Trevette are all at someone's house, and they're all dressed in black for this for a funeral, paying respects for somebody. And one thing that catches you right off the bat is Walker's super dope buffalo bone choker.
Yeah, it had some like turquoise accents.
Oh yeah, it's got some beads. Yeah.
Oh, it was epic.
Real good.
Pretty good stuff. He seems to only wear that on the reservation, I guess. I don't know. So they're paying respects for an elder of the tribe named Six Feathers. And while they're paying respects, Six Feathers' daughter, she gets a call from the cops, and they're like, hey, you know, your father's body's gone missing along with your brother.
Not a very good sign. But
yeah, exactly. And that's when we realize, oh yeah, that guy we just saw dancing is Billy Grey Wolf, who's Six Feathers' son, and he stole his father's corpse and is burning it.
That mound of dirt we saw with all the Native American flair and fire probably had his dead dad in it. So we don't know why, but we're back at the funeral here, and Walker's there paying his respects. Uncle Ray comes up. they say, "Hey, Uncle Ray," and I'm like, dude, that's not Uncle Ray.
Not Uncle Ray.
Yeah, it's a different actor, as we just talked about.
That's when they have to announce who it is.
Right, right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, I haven't had that much whiplash since they switched actresses on April O'Neil in the Ninja Turtles films.
Oh,
Come
yeah.
on now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Ninja Turtles 2 was not the same.
So we see Billy Grey Wolf, and he's, clearly performing some sort of ritual for his father's ashes or whatnot. And just out of nowhere, this truck pulls up, and this white dude with a rifle comes out and is like threatening him. We have no idea who that guy is or anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's like, "Man, you're a goner." And then all of a sudden the cops arrive.
Why the police? I mean, instantly the police are like, "Well, Billy stole the body. Better
someone
send out the
stole
whole cavalry."
Well, so even here we see this tension between Christianity and traditional rituals and whatnot. This guy is taking his father and burying him in a traditional way. Yeah, the cops come rushing out because he was taken from a church or something. I don't know. It's weird. It's very weird.
Yeah.
Anyways, cops come in from out of nowhere. There's a struggle for the gun. Then Billy jumps on a horse and rides off.
Epically, I might add.
Yeah. He saddles up that Palomino and he's out of there.
Yeah, he's like, no, I'm gone. And you're like, well, Billy might be the bad guy of the show as far as we know at this point.
Yeah.
We're mostly left wondering what the heck just happened because it was really confusing.
It was
and
very
no
unclear.
backstory.
Very unclear. And I watched this episode twice, and it was just as unclear the second time. So,
At which point, cuts to the opening titles, which the title music for season 3 is very strange.
Yeah.
It's like
I didn't know what to
super
make of it.
intense.
There's no hook, right? It's
No.
just
Yeah, none
kinda
of that.
this-
No vocals. After the credits, cut to, I guess, the morning after. Walker and Trevette are at the site of burial. They're like, "Man, great place to be buried. Good stuff." Walker's just sort of... He really gets into Walker headspace
that's
for a lot of this episode.
Yeah.
Kind of like in tunnel vision. He doesn't... I mean, he never really listens to Trevette much at all. It's more like whenever he actually listens or proves that he's heard Trevette, it's almost like a surprise on the show. So, like, in this case, he's, like, intentionally tuning everything out. And so he's sort of, like, tuning things out and talking to himself. And he's like, "Why, Billy? You've never run from anything in your life." And just as the viewers are like, "Wow, he must have some great background with Billy. Like, how does he know this about Billy?" Boom. Flashback.
Yeah.
How would you guys describe this flashback besides,
Besides bad child acting?
Well, I'd say, it looks like it mirrors Chuck Norris's actual childhood of being chastised for being half Cherokee and half Irish.
So yeah, these kids on the reservation are beating up a young Walker, and a husky child comes out and defends him, and they introduce themselves. And he says, "My name's Billy Grey Wolf," and boom, fast friends.
Yeah, he saved Walker from being bullied. So, and I'm not sure, is it immediately after that this next thing happens?
Well, they play a game of basketball. This would have been like in the early 1950s. Would basketball have made it to the Cherokee reservation? I don't know. It seems...
All you need are 2 hoops and a ball for basketball. That's the best thing about it, though.
That's true. Well, the best thing about this was that the basketball clearly had like a 1990s logo on it. So they're doing that.
I would say, like, we've had it pretty chill so far, right? The music's been pretty chill. And then it suddenly goes hardcore? Is that what happened, Bob?
Was this when the like solid state crate guitar amp comes in?
Yes.
Throughout this episode, the music was fascinating. There was like orchestral stuff. I heard bassoons, like real bassoons, trumpets with mutes, tons of weird MIDI stuff.
My favorite is the synthetic MIDI ocarina.
Oh yeah. Definitely heard that.
Well, at this point, though, it was kind of like Billy saved Walker, and they're playing basketball, like the typical Walker, like everything's okay music. And there's like, and you're like, are these guys going to get prison shanked? But
And
no.
isn't this the 50s?
What happens, Evan?
There's a lot of very clever editing, but we are led to believe as viewers that Billy cuts his hand, and then Walker does the same, and they clasp hands, and Billy says, "Now we're blood brothers." And Walker's like, "Blood brothers." And it's really awkward and weird. And then, boom, cut to today.
Out of the flashback, and Walker's still on his knees staring into space, and Trevette's waiting behind him, which leads you to think that this flashback happened in real time. Because Trevette goes, "Walker?" As if he's been waiting throughout the whole flashback.
It's been like 45 minutes.
Yeah, it's Walker vision, man. It's Walker vision. It's very intense.
And then Walker says, what, footprints or something?
No, he doesn't even say how he knows. He's just like, "Billy went this way," and then they hop in the truck and
Yeah, he doesn't even explain the flashback to Trevette because he knew Trevette just saw it with him.
But they hop in the truck, right? And then instead of them actually tracking him down, they just drive back into town. And this is where they run into the guy who had pulled a gun on Billy, but no one else knows that this happened. Mr. Bodie, who is a representative for the Tricontinental, I guess, gas conglomerate or petroleum conglomerate. And we learn that there's some sort of dispute going on regarding drilling rights on the reservation.
He was in a negotiation with Six Feathers to get the drilling rights to drill on the Cherokee land. They didn't seal the deal before Six Feathers died. So Mr. Brody is kind of like, hey, well, can we keep these negotiations going? And there was kind of this kind of face-off between him, Billy's sister, Walker, and Alex. Billy's sister was like, hey, we're going to protect ourselves here on this land. And he was like, well, we're going to protect ourselves too.
Yeah, there was definitely some tension there.
That was the intro of Mr. Brody, who is the guy who threatened Billy at the beginning with a shotgun, which we know, but Walker and the other Cherokees do not know that.
After he drives away and they've had that experience, Walker tries to get a bit more information and backstory, I guess inside the police station or something. That's where they learn, there was an investigation done into Six Feathers' death and that, they didn't really find any signs of foul play. They're like, well, we're going to have to bring Billy in for questioning. And Walker's all like, hey, man, I got to take him in. And they're like, you're out of your jurisdiction here in Oklahoma. At this point, and let me say, this is like 10 or 15 minutes into the episode, we had no idea this was in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Right.
I had the same reaction. I was like,
that's
nice.
Oh, okay, this is where we are.
Right.
So they're in Oklahoma, and, Walker's like,
Billy and I go way back. And the Native American police officer says, I know you guys were close.
And Walker's like, we are close. We're blood brothers.
Zoom in to Trevette's face, who looks like he just saw like a shark eat a whale after Chuck Norris says that.
Yeah, heartbroken.
He's like, blood brothers, what? And then the next frame goes to the Native American police officer, and he's like, God damn it, are you serious? You're going to say this, Chuck Norris? That's the look I got from that, right?
Yeah, and then Walker stares him down, and then the police officer relents and is like, all right, whatever.
Exactly, that's what happened.
And then we're led to believe that I guess the track down of Billy Grey Wolf is now in the hands of Walker.
And I looked this up too. I was like, blood brother. I mean, I've heard of it obviously, but definition: a man who has sworn to treat another man as a brother, sometimes with a ceremonial mingling of blood. Though rituals in which men became blood brothers were common in Asia, Europe, and Africa, it is the Native American ritual that inspired legions of boys living in the United States in the 1950s and 1960s to perform their own rituals, making themselves blood brothers, which is right around the era where a young Chuck Norris and his fledgling brothers are growing up.
So, what you're saying is when the police officer's rolling his eyes, he's really saying, effing boomers.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying.
So, meanwhile, while they're deciding who's going to be tracking down Billy, we see Mr. Bodie, the oil guy, bringing in his own crew of goons, and they're going to be tracking down Billy Grey Wolf as well. So this plane lands, and Mr. Bodie's waiting for the plane, and the plane like taxis and comes in, and you see it's got like this absolutely tiny little decal for Tricontinental Oil Company, like right underneath the cockpit, and you're like, okay, so they put that decal on. That's cool. That's coming off right after the episode. And they sort of like they pull in a taxi. And then you're like, well, who's going to be coming out of this plane? And then like this jamoke opens up the plane and like comes out in his dad jeans and baggy button-up shirt, and you're like, okay, I think he's got a baseball cap too.
Yeah,
you're like,
this
okay.
is a casting call for Walker villains right here.
Exactly. They just flew in. It just flew into Oklahoma from Texas.
It was the literal plane taking the actors in.
It really could have been. So yeah, there are like 6 of these guys. They're all wearing their dad jeans. And he's like, okay, here's a map of the reservation. And they've got like no context for this map whatsoever. And they're like, okay, yeah, looks like a lot of land. It's like, okay, great, good comment. There we go.
What's this over here? What's this part?
Right. It's like
do you want to know where we are first?
Oh man, and the lead guy, he's like, does it matter if we take him alive? Mr. Bodie's like, it matters that you take him dead. I'm like, what? Like, what? This has escalated very quickly.
Yeah.
Which tends to happen in these episodes. They're only 40-minute episodes, so things have to escalate quickly if you want anything to happen. Meanwhile, Walker's saddling up his horse, giving his goodbyes to Alex and to Trevette, at which point Trevette's like, whoa, I'm your partner, man. I gotta go with you. And then Walker's all hardline like, I'm not doing this as a police officer. I'm doing this as a friend.
And Trevette's like, well, I guess I'm going to be a friend of a friend.
To which I would expect, like, in the real world, that wouldn't be enough.
Yeah.
I can't think if you're really hardline, you're not going to be like, oh yeah, okay, sure.
Well, Walker's like, well, I'm only half Cherokee, so okay, come on.
Yeah, he like softens up immediately and is like, all right, let's do this.
And he kind of gives like a look to Alex, like, oh, here we go again. And you're like, he's your partner, dude. He's got your back. Have his back, Walker.
So anyways, Trevette tags along. They're riding along in the woods, and they're on horseback.
And this is like the outtakes from like Brokeback Mountain. These scenes of like him and Trevette riding along on horseback together, right?
Oh, they're having a great time.
And the music is like the Great Western via 90s MIDI.
Yeah, but it was like not your typical like, Western music or anything like that. It was
a modern for 1990s Western is what I took from it. It's like, well, if you put like music, like different music to it, it could have been the 1970s to me.
Oh, totally, yeah.
But the music was like, oh, well, we're in the 90s, but this is still out west.
But musically, it was very almost advanced. There were some weird modes going on. Like, this is not what I expected.
I don't know if that was advanced or malfeasance.
It could have just been random. Yeah.
So regardless, they're on their horseback, and Trevette's all like, I don't know how you can see anything from up here. And Walker's like, oh yeah, look over here. There's like some horse hair on this branch. As if like horses shed hair from their tails in large clumps.
It's a lot of hair.
It's like this giant clump of horse tail hair.
And Trevette's gonna like, oh man, I didn't even see that. This guy's good.
He's got some serious skills. At which point they both hear like car doors slamming. So it begs the question, like, how large is this tract of land if they just randomly bump into these guys as they arrive? It's the Goon Squad, and they are in their like super cool Jurassic Park Jeep.
And these are the guys looking to hunt down Billy.
Exactly.
On the Native American land.
Yeah, and Walker's like, hey, this is private reservation land. You guys have to go.
The guy's like, y'all rangers?
And then, aren't you out of your jurisdiction?
Yeah. And then what does the bad guy say of it?
He's like, why don't y'all just sashay your young butts back to Texas and stop bothering us? We've got ourselves an engine to catch.
Oh, my God.
Unbelievable.
So, of course, Walker and Trevette dismount from their horses and just unleash a series of roundhouse kicks on each one of the goons. Oh, it's awesome.
They take them out big time.
And the guy that was doing all the trash talking, Walker's kind of like, you want a piece of this? And the guy's like, he kind of calls it back, and then it fades out to the commercial.
Now, let me say that this lead goon, he's played by an actor from Texas named Blue Deckard. That guy, he looked really familiar to me, and that's because he's in like 7 episodes of Walker. Now, he plays a different person every time, kind of like that other goon we saw who played a goon with the Lambos, and then he was a lawyer
accountant
for Gary Busey.
Yeah, he was the accountant, right?
Yeah, something like that. Very rarely do recurring actors play the same person, but I will say that the actor who plays Billy Greywolf actually comes back later on and plays Billy Greywolf again.
Oh, good.
So that's pretty rare for an old friend to come back again. Sorry, a hashtag old friend to come back again.
Yeah, way to spoil the story to listeners who didn't want to watch the actual show, but okay.
If we've learned anything from our super fans, it's that they watch the shows in advance.
We did learn that from Kenny. Thank you, Kenny, again, for actually doing your homework. You're one of the true professionals of Walker, Texas Ranger.
For sure.
And we're not, because we let you down that week. And I blame Bob.
I accept your blame.
So this main henchman calls back to his boss, Mr. Bodie, and he's like, man, these Rangers. And Mr. Bodie's like, if we got to up the ante, got to up the ante. Accidents happen. It's like, wait, okay. So once again, we're escalating quite a bit here. We've gone from try to find a guy who is like responsible for menacing you to try to kill him to, oh, cops are in the way, kill them too. That's really gotten out of hand pretty quickly. Walker and Trevette pretty much unaware that this is happening outside of the shakedown they just had with these goons. And they're just cruising around in the meadowlands, tracking down Billy. Trevette's like, oh, I can see the trail now. You know, I'm really learning. Walker says, I'm going to make an Indian out of you yet. And then rides off. And
the PC police just like made the screen go black. And it just said, Native American, Walker. Indigenous people, Walker. But yeah, that kind of got me too. I was like, well, I guess we're still saying Indian back in 1994.
Meanwhile, back at the tribe council, Bodie is trying to make his case for the drilling rights. And instead of dealing with Six Feathers, he now has to deal with the tribe council. There are clearly some people who are questioning the
wisdom of Six Feathers. The Native American police officer was kind of like, it's modern times. We have to adapt. And if we take the oil money, it would help our people, which is, fair. But there were others like Billy's sister and Uncle Ray who seemed to feel like we want to preserve this land for as long as we can because we're the protectors of this land.
Well, Uncle Ray was the voice of reason and basically said, hey, we'll think about it. Give us some more time.
Right. So he kind of was just like, yeah, we'll deal with it tomorrow.
Bodie's all like, that's all I ask. Now I'm going to leave and go try to kill your friend.
Now I'm going to leave and try to kill Billy.
Oh, man. While that's happening, Walker and Trevette are traipsing through a meadow, tracking down Billy. Trevette gets knocked off his horse by gunfire, and his canteen is shot out, and they realize they're under fire, but it was only that one single shot.
Walker's like, it's Billy. He's sending us a warning.
He's been tracking us while we've been tracking him. Clever girl.
And then Trevette's like, he almost killed me.
It's like, no, if he wanted to kill you, he would have. That's a warning.
Yeah, you're like, okay.
I believe the quote is, Billy hits what he shoots at.
Right, yeah. Just pretty badass.
Yeah. And of course, Walker delivered that in the most measured tone anyone could have.
Of course, yeah. So while he was knocked off the horse, Trevette twisted his ankle. So Walker perceives that as meaning that he's no good to him anymore. As they start to make camp for the night, he sends Trevette back.
In the middle of sending Trevette off the camp, saying, hey, you know what? It's like he's turning into Rambo at the same time. It's like this monologue where he doesn't really say very many lines, but he's unbuttoning his shirt, and then he's taking out his bandana and rolling it up a la Rambo, and then holding it in place before tying it, all while he's dismissing Trevette. And he's getting like in this badass mode, and he's like, Trevette, you got a bad ankle. Why don't you go back and see what you can find out in Dallas at the police station? And I'm thinking, like, you were just teaching him how to track. He's going to be able to find his own way back through the woods
at night
without your help.
Right, yeah, the sun was going down.
What a dick move.
Right, and he's like, just head south. Uh-huh. How's he going to do that?
I'll just take out my compass.
Right, the horse knows where he's going.
But yeah, he's like full-on beast mode, shirtless, sitting cross-legged in front of a fire and just staring into the abyss. While Trevette's like, okay, let me sort of regroup and try to like figure out how I'm going to get back home.
We presume that Walker built the fire while Trevette was there?
I guess. Not only did he build a fire, he built 2 fires.
And then they leave on a shot of Chuck Norris shirtless with a bandana wrapped around his head, staring mindlessly into the ether as the flames were in front of him.
Yeah, he's getting legit. This beast mode Walker right now.
And you're like, this is what we watch Walker Texas Ranger for.
Absolutely. So while he's doing that, we actually see Alex doing some serious work here. She's shaking down the tri-continental higher-ups here. She's like, hey, you know what's going on your reservation?
We see him from his office, and he literally has a painting in his office.
Yeah, it's over the top.
It's like an oil painting of an oil company destroying an Indian reservation, is what it looks like, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't the camera, the shot is like on that for a minute before...
Yep.
It might as well be smoking a cigar and having a brandy or whatever.
He's a history buff, that's all.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
so,
that's fair.
but we're led to believe that he's kind of innocent in all this, and he just doesn't understand that it's his underlings that are really pillaging the Native American people. And Alex kind of has a heart-to-heart call with him, and we then zoom in on Alex's office, and in her desk is one of those baker's lamps from Top Dog.
Yeah, the green banker's lamp. You got to have those, man. Yeah.
And she pretty much says, hey, look, your guy Brody, he's got his hands dirty, and something's not smelling right in Oklahoma. So you better meet me there, and let's see what we can do.
Flashback to Walker. He's sweating it out to the oldies. The moon is like a spotlight. You know what they say about the stars at night in Texas.
And yeah, literally
his bare chest glistening in the moonlight.
Oh yeah, it looks like he's actually cooking himself by the fire. He's like basted himself in sweat.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And he hasn't moved since we saw him earlier in the day.
He's staring into the coals, and while he's doing that, we're getting like this weird stock footage of Native American dancers dancing around a fire, and they're like superimposed over the flames. It's like, it's vintage Walker is what it is. All of a sudden, he just like stands up, and you're like, okay, well now he's going to go do something real. And he walks over to a bed of hot coals that somehow he prepared. And you're like, okay, I see what you're doing here. And he walks across the coals.
Yeah, and at the end of the bed of coals, he stops, still stepping on the coals, and holds for like 6 seconds. And they pan up to his face, and his face has no reaction the whole time he's walking over the coals. He's stone-faced.
That's his signature look.
Yeah.
It's his only look.
He kind of holds his feet to the fire an extra 6 seconds and then steps off.
At which point you're like, okay, now he's going to do something. And no, he goes and sits by the fire again.
And I will add before we get to this next part that when they were showing him like days off and like hallucinate these Native American rituals, they also clipped to Billy doing the same thing. And it was kind of like, oh, they might have been communicating in a way. But unfortunately, we weren't able to hear the conversation because Walker was egregiously interrupted. How so, Bob?
If there's one thing that'll break up your meditation mantra thing that he was doing, it's probably going to be a helicopter with a spotlight. I can only assume they were searching for the other guy, right?
Yeah, and they saw the flames. That's all I
But
can
they
think
saw the
of.
flames, so they probably didn't identify who it was. But they figured it's about time to take out the Uzi.
Exactly, the
blasting.
one Uzi.
And the Walker's reaction, you do like a judo roll away,
Right.
Oh, yeah.
gets the gun,
Yeah, for
and then
sure.
of course like shoots out the light immediately.
They lay into him with the Uzi from the helicopter. Don't hit him, but yeah, he does like a judo roll over to his man bag, pulls out a pretty sick silver revolver, shoots 2 shots, and hits the helicopter. And the helicopter's like, okay, we're out.
Well, he just almost got like shot and deterred a helicopter full of bad guys. Now he's going to go do something. And that something is sit back down in front of the fire and stare into it again. And this time he has a flashback.
So it's him, Billy, and the third actor to portray Uncle Ray that we know of. Right? So it's a young Uncle Ray is showing a young Walker and Billy how to hunt. And Walker is saying, hey, I can never see any of the animals out here we're searching for. And Uncle Ray's like, well, the animals will let you know when they want you to see them. Which proceeds to some pretty awesome stock footage of animals that they use with no interaction with the actors at all.
So the actor who plays young Uncle Ray, he's in a bunch of other stuff, including Parks and Recreation, where he plays the chief of the Wamapoke tribe.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah,
I noticed that
he's
right away.
hilarious on that. But yeah, he pulls something out of some pouch and whispers some incantation, and all of a sudden these deer come out of nowhere. And the stock footage is of like I think it's a fallow deer. It's a European species. They're not in North America.
Weird spots. I'm like, I've never seen a deer like that before.
So like these things come out, and you're like, oh wow, that's some decent footage of some deer or whatever.
And that was some pretty quick delivery on his incantation too.
I know, like I need one of those pouches, man. Billy's about to bust out his gun and take one of these deer out. Uncle Ray's like, no, they're saying they're not ready. They said, wait a minute. And sure enough, this mother and her fawn, they walk away, and a buck comes out. Ray levels that gun, and we assume they ate some fallow deer venison that night.
I think he says, she's ready to die.
He says it's a good day to die or something like that.
And Uncle Ray pulls the gun to his eye, and I'm like, oh, are they going to show him kill the deer and have it actually be an interactive shot? Of course not. The crossfade back to Walker at the fire, and then play the gunshot.
Yeah, that would have been a shot all the way from West Texas to the forests of Europe.
Which
a hell of a shot.
Uncle Ray could pull a shot off like that.
If anyone could.
Yeah. So, flash to Trevette. He's made it back to town, and he's walking through Six Feathers' house, where we learn that even though they said that they didn't have any like foul play or anything like that, Six Feathers died by falling down a well.
Literally falling down a well at his house. Right. And that was what was fishy to Trevette. Trevette's like, hey, he's lived here all his life, and he doesn't know where the well is. Give me a break. The police officer who's on the council and is also Native American was like, yes, it seemed fishy, but we found no evidence. And Trevette's like, well, do you mind if I look around too? Not at all. So they go into his house and they're looking around, and Trevette's like, oh, is this Six Feathers a smoking pouch? The guy's like, yeah. He's like, oh, did he roll his own? And we found out that Six Feathers rolled his own.
Not only that, he had a habit of kicking a rug, apparently. So, like, they really thought about this, about how they could have not seen, like, a blood stain on the carpet.
That rug was a legend. That was a legendary rug.
Yeah, it had a killer backstory.
Yeah, the rug had a backstory. And then, not only did the rug have history, but, like, also, Six Feathers would always kick the rug at the end of the day, so it was crumpled up in the corner. And so the police were like, oh, well, he always kicks it into the corner, so we won't check that for blood. And of course, it was covered in blood. That
like,
seems unnecessary. I want to see Walker sweating it out again. Meanwhile, back in the woods, Walker meets a wolf.
Oh, man, is this more stock footage of a wolf or are they actually in the same shot? I think he says out loud, he's like, "Oh, you're letting me see you. You must be showing me to Billy." And he's communicating with the wolf. I'm counting that as communication, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. There's like eye contact. Yeah. There's communication there.
This is one of Walker's superpowers, and we've been waiting for it. I think this is the first time he communicates with an animal in an episode.
And sometimes he uses those animal strengths, like he might be able to see through the eyes of a hawk. In this case, the wolf is acting as his guide. Now, wolves were historically found throughout most of North America, including parts of Texas. But much like most of the range of wolves in the States, they've been driven out of there. So wolves have not been in Texas for probably over 100 years. But
now, Billy's full name is Billy Grey Wolf, if I'm not mistaken, right? So there could be some connection here, but...
Adam, that's the literal connection here. Come on now. Jeez. It's like slapping you in the face.
Absolutely is a connection.
Oh, yeah. Just didn't see it.
Back at CD's bar.
So Trevette drives from Oklahoma to Dallas just to get reamed by CD telling him how to do police work.
Yeah, pretty much.
CD's like trying to tell him like, "Oh, did you check this? Did you check that?" Because CD is a retired ranger, as we know. He's sitting at a table with Alex, and they're going over the case. And when he leaves, they're both kind of like, "Okay, now we can get to work." And Alex is like, "So did you run the DNA?" And he's like, "Yeah, of course I did, but it's not going to be done for like a few weeks, so we don't have that evidence." And
CD's like, "They do amazing things with DNA these days."
Yeah. Trevette's like, "Yeah, it's going to take us 2 or 3 weeks to get the DNA results back."
Did you guys notice that Trevette and Alex are both drinking real beer?
Because Walker wasn't there.
Right, yeah. I was like, what's that yellow liquid they're drinking? Usually it's like soda or water.
They're like, "Oh, finally we can let loose. The old stick in the mud's not here."
So, anyways, Trevette's all like, "Man, Walker, he wasn't Walker when I left him." And, Alex is like, "Wait, what?" And he's all like, "I don't know what he turned into, but he turned into someone who I don't want after me."
A little foreboding there.
Cut to Walker chasing a freaking wolf. Boom.
Yeah.
Gets into a clearing. Wolf disappears.
And then Walker goes,
"Billy Grey Wolf, I know you're here." Billy Grey Wolf appears from behind a tree.
Walker hears him coming and flips him over his shoulder. And he says, "Billy, I don't want to fight you. I don't want to fight you." Billy comes at him again, uses the same exact flip. And he's like, "Billy, I came here to help. I'm here to help." Uses the same exact flip
One more
again.
time.
At which point, Billy is like, "All right, enough of this shit." And he pulls out his rifle.
That was a day where the choreographer was like, "Well, I can really only teach you one move today." What will it be?
How to Get Thrown by Chuck Norris 101.
Just get flipped over.
Yeah, so Billy's holding Walker at gunpoint, and Walker's like, "Billy, I'm here to help." And Billy's like, "Are you here as a ranger, or are you here as my brother?" Harkening back to the whole Blood Brothers thing. What does Walker say, Bob?
Brother.
Exactly.
At which point, they're bros again. They hug it out.
And as Walker is hugging him over his shoulder, he has the coldest face I've ever seen. Like, because
it's just sort of staring into space like a robot.
Yeah, because they hug it out, and Walker's still like stone faced.
He's like, "I don't normally hug. This isn't my thing." They do catch up over some tea over the campfire.
And there's like, "This is Uncle Ray's specialty.
Chicory and corn silk. Give it a try sometime. Or don't. I don't know if it's poisonous, so please don't."
Yeah.
So we find that Billy really suspects that Mr. Bodie is the one responsible for his father's death. And his goal was to essentially lure Mr. Bodie and his men onto Cherokee land and, I guess, murder them to get justice and to put his father's soul at rest.
And he would become the proverbial Rainbow Warrior, which is also referenced earlier in the episode briefly. So hence the title of the episode. So he's protecting his family's land in the honor of his father, Chief Six Feathers, from these oil executives.
As the Rainbow Warrior. And Walker basically bonks him over the head essentially and says, just tell people what you think happened. And he's like, oh yeah, okay, I guess that makes sense. Let's go back.
Yeah.
They head back together on the same horse's back.
Mm-hmm.
And,
didn't they each have a horse earlier? Where'd the other horse go?
Oh yeah, he did. He rode off into the woods with the horse. Maybe he had to like eat it or something.
I don't know. I think Chuck Norris likes to be spooned. I think that was kind of the deal. But
who doesn't?
Yeah. They were cozying up on that Palomino, that's for sure.
It was a slow ride.
Yeah, they're moseying back home. They're doing a little birding on the way home. Billy's like, hey, Walker, look at that. And Walker's, and we see, like, again, stock footage. In this case, it's a bald eagle flying. And we hear something gets nailed to the chalkboard to someone who's interested in birds like myself, which is they play the call of a red-tailed hawk whenever they show an eagle. So they do that. The kier! And
is
Walker's
it because,
like
Eagles' actual calls are like, hey?
Yeah.
Oh no, bald eagles calls is like a whimper. It's just like a
chirp.
Beep, 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 beep. That's it.
Oh, okay.
So that's like, why it's so sad. Yeah.
Hey.
Hey there,
America.
And Walker's like, yeah, it's an eagle. And then Billy's like, no, it's a lone eagle. And Walker's like, oh yes, a lone eagle.
They're endangered.
Right? Like, what are we supposed to get out of this? And then all of a sudden they hear ATVs, and we realize that the Hillbilly Convention is coming to take these guys out, and it's about to get real.
I paused the episode and I said, 8 minutes left. All right, time to hit nitro.
Oh yeah. So there are like so many goons on ATVs. It's awesome.
There's 2 ATVs to start in a car, right? Like a Jeep, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but then like they shoot like 4 guys off ATVs. So either they're getting on the same ones or there are more of them. I don't know.
Yeah, so Walker and Billy dismount from the horse and scatter, and Billy slaps the ass of the horse kind of like a sexual way, and the horse just stays, so I think he's used to it and doesn't run off. But Billy runs off, and the guys on the 4-wheels are like, hey, and they start shooting at him, and Billy is able to get cover, and Walker goes in the other direction, and then we see some awesome shots of these ATVs just ripping through the woods, and they show one guy on an ATV. He gets shot by Billy, and every time like someone's shot off an ATV, it's like they're forcefully ejected from this ATV, right? It's like
they have to jump off to the side.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It might be slow mode. Is it slow mode? It must be, right?
I think it's slightly slow-mo.
They like literally are forcibly ejected in like slow mo. It's awesome. So it's like Billy shoots one of the guys with his rifle, and he's just like boom in slow mo, almost like Matrix style, but with no CGI. And then they show a guy in like a MAGA hat shoots Billy, okay, and Billy gets hit. And then they go back to the guy on the ATV. He's peeling down towards Billy, who's just been shot. And Walker pops out from behind a log and like shoots him with his pistol. And the guy again is forcibly ejected off his ATV. So another one down.
So the main goon comes around and oh man, he's got Billy at gunpoint, you know, and you think this is the end for Billy.
Yeah.
And he's all like, happy hunting grounds, Injun. At which point, Walker comes flying out from behind a tree, kicks the guy into oblivion.
Yeah.
And that guy, he's not shot, but we never see him again. So we assume he's dead just from the kick. Walker takes off his bandana, and he's like, Billy, here, apply some pressure. And Billy's like, yeah, man, I know.
Except he's like, I've got your nasty like head sweat on this bandage that I'm putting on my wound.
It's not sterilized.
But beggars can't be choosers at this point.
At which point we hear a helicopter, and Walker's like, okay, I'll take care of these guys.
Definitely the same helicopter, but so he's in the middle of the woods, classic Walker. He's already taken out the goons on the ground. Another helicopter comes around, and they actually spot him while he's still in the woods and lay some fire into the woods and hit Walker.
Yeah, he gets shot, which that's clearly like a season 1 through 3 thing. Doesn't really happen ever again. But not only does he get shot, the bullet grazes his pistol, his trusty pistol, which, as we've established before, is capable of taking down anything from airplanes to helicopters to one-shot stopping vehicles. It can do anything, but it's busted up from this bullet. So he's left to his own devices to find some other way to handle these goons on this helicopter.
Exactly. And he's on the ground. The helicopter's turning around to make another pass at him. He opens his shirt to inspect his wound. And you're like, oh, man, how bad is this going to be? And it looks like maybe it just grazed him, right?
Yeah, it didn't look very bad at all.
That's the only thing I can say. Because if it went through his stomach, there's no way he'd be able to get back up and do what he's doing. It might have just grazed him.
How it injured him is irrelevant.
Right. We have to remember who we're talking about here.
Yeah, so his revolver's damaged. He's like, what am I going to do to take down this helicopter? Let me go inspect the bad guy's Jeep. And he checks the glove box, presumably for like another piece. It's completely empty. It doesn't even have like the manual for the car in there. Very inconsiderate. Anyway.
You'd think you'd be able to get a gun from one of the 5 or 6 guys that they just shot off ATVs, and they're all carrying the same prop gun.
Yeah, but
so
if
there's
he
at least
did,
one gun.
Or the guy that he kicked.
Yeah.
And he fell asleep, apparently, after he kicked him.
Right.
Yep.
But if he did, he wouldn't be able to do what he does next. What happens, Bob?
He comes across a little piece of rope and shows the Texas in him.
Yeah, so he's going through the Jeep, and in the back of the Jeep, after he can't find any guns, we get a close-up on a lasso. He cradles it and then heads right towards the helicopter, and you're like, oh my God, he's going to rope a helicopter.
That's what I thought, for sure.
I thought so too. I was
Right.
pretty disappointed at what actually happened.
Yeah. What happens is they spend about 5 minutes of like Walker walking to the periphery of the forest with his lasso and the helicopter looking for a place to land with the main villain / a stunt double of the main villain.
It is so clearly a stunt double. Mr. Bodie has hair. The stunt double's got like this really nasty bald spot, and like it's completely
They're dressed
different.
the same though, so it's the same character, and they're looking for a place to land, which coincidentally is right by the lip of the forest where Walker is waiting with his lasso. So Walker waits till they're about to land and then just walks out and ropes the guy off the helicopter, which is pretty awesome. I mean, I think maybe in a few more seasons he might have actually roped the helicopter. But at this point, this is what we got, and it was still satisfying. They knew the audience would be let down by him just pulling the guy off the helicopter while he was about 8 feet off the ground. So they had him engage in some fisticuffs. So Brody went at Walker. Walker lays him up with a nice kick. Brody didn't have enough. He lays him up with a roundhouse kick. Still didn't have enough. Walker takes him out with a third nice roundhouse kick. Perfectly placed. And Billy comes out of the woods after he's patched up his wound with Walker's magical sweat rag. And he comes out and he gets the pilot of the helicopter. He says something like, if you like your hair, you won't move.
Yeah, he's like, want to see what you look like without hair? Or something like that.
Yeah.
As if
like,
he's going to
what?
scalp the guy. Yeah.
Like, really, man? Come on now.
All right. Again, probably would not be in any episode of TV these days. Something like that.
And with that, the fight concludes. So everything is kind of wrapped up. Walker and Trevette, I guess, share a meal and coffee in brown mugs. They toast everything with the council. They say, okay, we got to be on our way. And on
And
their
let me
way
point out
out
real quick here that Trevette made the trip back to Oklahoma just to have a brown mug of whatever they were drinking. Just, again, to head back to Dallas.
He probably needed a ride.
Oh, that's true, yeah. Yeah.
and on their way back to their vehicle, Billy's all like, hey, man, thank you so much for what you did.
No, he said, like, Walker, thank you for showing me the way. And Walker goes, it was in you the whole time. So, like, it was kind of like Walker was showing a Native American how to be Native American.
Absolutely.
And then they shake hands, and Walker goes, blood brothers. And I'm waiting for it, and Billy doesn't say it back. Freeze frame.
Freeze frame. Well, that about sums up this episode. We'd like to give a shout out to our friend and collaborator, Adam Lauritsen, who's been drawing the amazing Walkerstrations on our social media. Be sure to check out his other art on Instagram at @ImaginationRunAmuck. When we come back, it'll be time for us to each rate Rainbow Warrior, on a scale of 0 to 10 boots to the face, resulting in our patented Roundhouse Roulette episode ranking. Complete results of which will be available on our website, roundhouseroulette.com. Don't go away. Welcome back. Well, this was an interesting one, guys. Definitely an earlier vintage of Walker. Adam, what did you think about this one?
Man, this had some really good stuff in it. I mean, just on face value. Chuck Norris tracks another Native American who happens to be his blood brother by horseback. He holds a shirtless seance by firelight and communicates with his Native American ancestors. He then walks barefoot across burning coals, stone-faced. While sitting shirtless in front of the fire, a helicopter goon squad fires on him. He fires 2 shots from his pistol, and the helicopter just goes away. He single-handedly takes out another goon squad of 4-wheelers, and then he manages to lasso a helicopter. So, I mean, just based on that, you would think it would be a pretty good episode, right? The problem with this episode, for me, is it was really kind of slow and didn't pick up until the last 8 minutes of the episode, which we know is usually jam-packed with action. That's when it all happens. But it just didn't really have a lot of things in between that were worthwhile. I'm going to go 6.
Interesting. Well, I definitely agree with a lot of your points there. I think the ridiculousness factor is ramped up pretty high on this one, culminating in that maybe 5 or 10 minute section in the middle where he is like doing his own sweat lodge and burning herbs and walking over freaking hot coals. Like, what is this besides awesome?
Yeah.
And I think that the flashbacks, although most of the time flashbacks in Walker are horrible, I think the flashbacks in this were pretty hilarious. The whole Blood Brothers thing was really weird. With the 40 minutes of a Walker episode, you can't really do the whole sort of adventure quest thing very easily while trying to have this whole other backstory. I think this one did it better than some other ones. Like End Run was another sort of quest mystery sort of thing. I definitely think End Run was better than this. I think I gave that a 10. But this was pretty similar to that in that, they're sort of going through the woods and getting tracked down. There were definitely some sort of boring aspects to it. I don't know. I call this one an 8. I still think it's pretty awesome and like vintage Walker and like the communicating with the wolf. What is that? I mean, that just for that alone. I mean, that's like an extra point. So yeah, I give this an 8.
Yeah, I'm with you, Evan. I also put 8 for this one. Maybe it's just we've been in the later seasons for a while. The flow of this episode, I feel like they didn't get bogged down in side stories. Negatives would be no explosions and minimal fights.
Car chases?
No car chases. And I was waiting to ask the question of whether we consider a horse chase a vehicle chase, but we never had that opportunity.
Yeah, so no chases, no explosions.
The music.
Pretty epic.
The music was captivating. I was like just totally engaged with this music. It wasn't good. It was perfect. Yeah, I liked it.
All right.
So that gives this episode a average roundhouse rating of 7.33 repeating. Boots to the face. Ah! Well, I think we can all agree that helicopters and machine guns are no match for a well-timed lasso. So let us know what you think on social media or by emailing us at roundhouseroulette@gmail.com. When we come back, we'll spin the Roundhouse Roulette wheel and select next week's episode. And we're back. Bob, you ready to spin that wheel?
You know it.
Oh, man.
Oh, no.
The Covenant. A street gang put CD in the hospital. Their leader tries to enlist the aid of one of Walker's karate students in an upcoming turf war.
Yes.
Turf war, CD in the hospital.
Yeah, I'm all in.
All right, well, we hope you'll join us next week when we share our reactions to Season 4, Episode 11, The Covenant. Share your opinions with us on Facebook and Instagram at Roundhouse Roulette and on Twitter at Roundhouse Pod. And rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your fine podcasts. Thanks for listening, and until next week,
may the eyes of the Ranger be upon you.
When you're in Texas, look behind you. Oh, 'cause that's where the Ranger's gonna be.